The Crystal Palace ballroom had never looked more perfect. Crystal chandeliers dripped light like frozen rain across the ivory tables, each centerpiece a towering arrangement of white roses and silver ribbons. Soft string music floated above the murmur of 150 guests' friends, distant relatives, colleagues who barely knew me but smiled politely when Daniel introduced my mother, Evelyn. Champagne flowed in endless rivers, laughter rose in elegant waves, and at the center of it all stood the bride and groom. Radiant in their moment, I had arrived early that morning to help with last-minute details, the way mothers do. I adjusted napkins, straightened place cards, even pinned a stray curl back into Victoria's updo when her stylist stepped away. She thanked me with a tight smile that never reached her eyes. "You're so sweet, Evelyn, really. Just try not to get in the photos too much, okay? We want a clean, modern aesthetic." I nodded, swallowed the small hurt, and retreated to my assigned table near the back. The reception unfolded beautifully at first. Toasts were heartfelt, mostly. Daniel's best man joked about how my son had finally found someone who could keep up with him. Victoria's maid of honor gushed about the power couple they had become. I sat quietly, smiling when expected, clapping when prompted. My navy silk dress, the one I'd bought on sale 3 years earlier and had altered to fit perfectly, was modest, next to the designer gown swirling around me. My 2008 Toyota waited in the valet line like a faithful old dog among sleek sports cars. I didn't mind. I never had. Then came the cake cutting. Cameras flashed. Victoria fed Daniel a delicate bite, laughing when frosting dotted his nose. Everyone cheered. I stood at the edge of the crowd, proud in my quiet way, until Victoria caught my eye and beckoned me forward. "Evelyn, come here! Family photo time!" Her voice was honey-sweet for the audience. I stepped closer, smoothing my dress nervously. Daniel smiled at me briefly, almost apologetically, before Victoria slipped her arm through his and pulled him slightly away from me. After the photos, she leaned in close while the band struck up the first dance. Her breath was warm against my ear, scented with champagne and entitlement. "About the penthouse," she whispered. "We've talked about this. Daniel and I need to start our married life properly. That place is huge, 3 bedrooms, wraparound terrace, river views. You rattle around in it alone. It's not practical. Sign the transfer papers today. We'll even help you find a nice assisted living spot. You'll thank us later." I felt my stomach twist. We had discussed this multiple times. I had said no each time, politely but firmly. The apartment wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was where Robert and I had built our life after years of quiet struggle, where we raised Daniel, where Robert took his last breath in my arms, whispering that he was proud of the woman I had become. It held every memory worth keeping. "I've already told you, Victoria," I replied softly. "It's not for sale. Not to anyone." Her smile froze. She glanced around to make sure no one was too close, then lowered her voice to a hiss. "You're being unreasonable, selfish. At your age, you should be thinking about legacy, not hoarding space. Daniel is your only child. This is your chance to do something meaningful for him. For us." I opened my mouth to respond, but she cut me off. "Sign it, tonight, or I swear. I'll make sure everyone here knows exactly what kind of mother you really are." The threat landed like ice water. I stepped back, heart pounding. Before I could walk away, she grabbed my wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to stop me. "Don't walk away from me when I'm talking to you," she snapped, louder now. Heads turned. I tried to pull free gently. "Victoria, please, not here." That was the spark. Her hand flew up so fast I didn't see it coming. The open palm connected with my cheek in a crack that echoed louder than the music. My reading glasses' thin gold frames. Robert had chosen for me 20 years ago, flew from my face and skittered across the marble floor. One lens popped out. The other shattered under the heel of a passing guest who didn't even notice. The ballroom went deathly silent. My cheek burned. Heat spread from the point of impact across my face, down my neck. I tasted copper blood from where my teeth had cut the inside of my lip. Slowly, I bent to retrieve what remained of my glasses. My hands shook so badly the broken pieces slipped twice before I could grasp them. No one moved. Not Daniel, who stood 10 feet away, face pale, eyes fixed on the floor as if studying the pattern in the tiles. Not Victoria's mother, who clutched her pearls and looked away. Not the friends who had toasted my wonderful son moments earlier. Just silence. Thick, suffocating, judgmental silence. Victoria smoothed her gown, chest rising and falling rapidly. "That's what happens when you refuse to help your own family," she announced to the room, voice trembling with manufactured righteousness. "A woman your age clinging to a luxury apartment while your son and his wife struggle? Pathetic." I rose slowly. My knees protested, but my spine straightened. Tears streamed down my face, not from pain, but from the sudden brutal clarity of it all. For 3 years I had endured the subtle digs, the comments about my frumpy clothes, the sighs when I declined invitations to expensive restaurants I couldn't afford. The brochures for senior communities slipped under my door like poison pen letters. I had told myself it was just youth ambition stress. I had excused Daniel's silence because he was in love, because marriage changes people. But this was the line. I looked at my son, really looked at him, the boy I had rocked through fevers, taught to ride a bike, stayed up nights, helping with college applications. The man who now couldn't meet my eyes while his wife humiliated me in front of everyone we knew. Something deep inside me cracked open, not breaking, but awakening. The mask I had worn so carefully, the modest widow, the harmless old mother, the invisible supporter, shattered on that ballroom floor along with my glasses. I straightened my shoulders, wiped the tears with the back of my hand, and met Victoria's gaze without flinching. "You have no idea who you just slapped," I said quietly, but every word carried. Then I turned and walked toward the exit. Guests parted like water. Whispers followed me like smoke. But for the first time in years, my steps were steady. The quiet, invisible widow they had all pitied, she was gone, and the woman who replaced her had nothing left to lose and everything left to reclaim. The heavy glass doors of the Crystal Palace swung shut behind me with a soft, final click that felt like the end of one life and the beginning of something else entirely. The hallway beyond was cooler, quieter, the muffled strains of the orchestra fading into a distant hum. My heels echoed too, loudly on the marble as I made my way down the service corridor, toward the underground parking garage. Each step sent fresh jolts through my stinging cheek. But the real pain was deeper, sharper, lodged somewhere between my ribs where a mother's heart is supposed to live forever unbroken. I reached my car, the same silver 2008 Toyota Corolla that Victoria had once called an embarrassment to the family name, and fumbled with the keys. My hands shook so badly I dropped them twice. When the door finally opened, I collapsed into the driver's seat and let the tears come. Not loud sobs, not dramatic wails, just silent, steady streams that blurred the dashboard lights and soaked the collar of my navy silk dress. I cried for the boy Daniel used to be, the one who ran to me with scraped knees, who hugged me so tight after his first heartbreak that I thought my ribs would crack, who once told me at 16 that I was the strongest person he knew. I cried for the man he had become, silent, averted eyes, complicit in cruelty because it was easier than standing up. 3 years of small cuts replayed in my mind like a cruel montage. Victoria's first visit to the penthouse, 2 months after she and Daniel started dating seriously, she had walked through the rooms with the slow appraisal of a real estate agent, trailing manicured fingers along the walnut bookshelves Robert had built himself. "This place is surprisingly spacious for one person," she had said, her tone light but edged. "You must get lonely rattling around in all this square footage." Daniel had laughed nervously and changed the subject. I had smiled and offered tea, pretending not to hear the judgment. Then came the brochures, glossy pamphlets for exclusive senior living communities that appeared mysteriously on my kitchen island after their visits. "We just want you to be comfortable, Evelyn," Victoria would say, eyes wide with feigned concern. "These places have activities, meals, 24-hour staff. You wouldn't have to worry about maintenance or stairs." Daniel would nod along, murmuring, "She's right. Mom, it might be easier." Easier for whom? I always wondered, but never asked aloud. The comments grew bolder over time. "That dress is sweet, but maybe something more modern next time. Your car is so vintage. Isn't it unsafe at your age? You still take the bus to the market? We could get you an Uber Black account if money's tight." Each remark was wrapped in concern, delivered with a smile, but they accumulated like rust on metal, slow, inevitable, corrosive. "And Daniel?" He said nothing. Not once did he correct her. Not once did he pull me aside and whisper, "Mom, I'm sorry, she doesn't mean it that way." He just let it happen, month after month, as if my dignity were a small price to pay for domestic peace. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand, smearing mascara across my knuckles. Enough. The time for silent endurance was over. I reached into my purse, the same black leather one I'd carried for 7 years because it was practical, not because I couldn't afford better, and pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over the contacts for a long moment before I pressed the name I hadn't called in over a year. It rang twice. Evelyn? Richard's voice was calm, professional, but laced with immediate concern. Are you all right? No, I said simply. I'm not. I need you to come to the Crystal Palace, right now. Bring the black folder, the one labeled Emergency Disclosure, Family. Everything in it. A brief pause. Are you certain? Once we open that door? I'm certain, I interrupted. My voice sounded different to my own ears, steadier, colder. Bring it all. I'll be there in 18 minutes. I ended the call and sat in the dim garage light, breathing slowly. The folder Richard would bring contained the truth I had guarded for decades. Robert and I had built our wealth quietly, deliberately. He started as a junior accountant. I worked as a part-time bookkeeper while raising Daniel. We invested every spare pound, stocks, bonds, property, never flashing it, never bragging. Visible wealth, Robert always said, attracts parasites. Invisible wealth protects what matters. When he died 12 years ago, the portfolio passed to me. I kept living the same way. Modest clothes, reliable car, part-time work at the charity, bookshop because I loved the smell of old pages and the company of quiet people. The penthouse wasn't a luxury. It was home. The income from the 3 Mayfair commercial buildings covered everything and more. The investments had grown to $9.1 million. Total net worth, over $15 million. But the cruelest irony? For the last 5 years, I had been their silent lifeline. Daniel's startup that never quite launched, I had quietly paid off. $220,000 in loans when the bank started calling. Victoria's endless business expenses, designer handbags, spa weekends. Networking trips I covered $140,000 worth. Routing the money through anonymous transfers, so they'd think it was luck or bonuses. Even this wedding, the Crystal Palace venue, the orchestra, the 7-tier cake. I had guaranteed $68,000 of it, telling the planner it was a surprise gift from a family friend. They never asked where the money came from. They never thanked me. They just took. Headlights swept across the garage entrance. Richard's black Mercedes pulled in smoothly. He stepped out, folder in hand, expression grave under the sodium lights. Evelyn, he said, handing it over. Last chance to walk away. I opened the folder. The valuation summary stared back at me in clean black ink. Numbers that could change lives or destroy them. I closed it again. No more walking away. I told him. They slapped the wrong woman tonight. Richard nodded once, respect flickering in beginning. Together we turned back toward the elevators. The quiet widow was dead. The reckoning was just beginning. The elevator doors opened onto the ballroom level with a soft chime that felt absurdly polite given what was about to happen. Richard walked beside me. Black folder tucked under his arm like a weapon of quiet precision. My cheek still throbbed, a dull heat under the skin. But the tremor in my hands had steadied into something colder, more deliberate. The music, some gentle waltz, reached us first. Then the laughter, the clink of glasses, the low buzz of celebration that had continued without me. As we stepped through the arched doorway, the room didn't notice us immediately. Guests swayed on the dance floor. Others clustered around high tables, sharing photos on their phones. Victoria stood near the head table in her ivory gown, laughing at something her father said, one hand resting possessively on Daniel's sleeve. Then someone spotted us. A ripple moved through the crowd like wind over water. Heads turned. Conversations faltered. The orchestra conductor glanced our way and signaled the musicians. The waltz trailed off into uncertain strings. By the time we reached the center of the room, near the now empty dance floor, the entire ballroom had fallen into an expectant hush. Victoria saw us last. Her smile froze when her eyes landed on Richard, then flicked to the folder, then to my face. For a split second, I saw fear flash behind the arrogance quick. Animal, gone in an instant. She recovered fast, tossing her head with a laugh that sounded forced even to her. "Oh, wonderful," she announced loudly enough for the nearest tables to hear. "The charity case is back, and she brought her lawyer friend. Come for the leftover cake, Evelyn. Or did you forget something?" A few nervous chuckles rose from the guests, but they died quickly. No one joined in. The air felt thick, charged. Richard didn't smile. He simply raised his voice clear, measured, carrying to every corner without shouting. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am Richard Langford, legal counsel for Mrs. Evelyn Harper. I apologize for the interruption, but I have several formal and urgent notices to deliver to Mr. Daniel Harper and Mrs. Victoria Langford Harper." He opened the folder with a crisp snap that echoed in the silence. Phones came out slowly at first, then faster recording lights winking on like tiny stars. First, Richard continued, "All financial assistance previously provided by Mrs. Harper to Daniel Harper and Victoria Langford Harper is terminated effective immediately. This includes monthly transfers, loan guarantees, credit support, and any other indirect or direct payments. Your landlords, creditors, and service providers will be notified beginning tomorrow morning." A collective gasp rolled through the room. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. Daniel's face drained of color so fast he looked almost gray. Second, Richard went on without pause, the $68,000 financial guarantee provided by Mrs. Harper for tonight's reception, including venue, catering, orchestra, floral arrangements, photography, and bar services, has been formally withdrawn. The Crystal Palace management has been instructed to secure alternative payment within the next 30 minutes. Failure to do so will result in immediate suspension of all services and a request for guests to vacate the premises. The venue manager, a tall man in a charcoal suit who had been hovering near the back, stepped forward now, clipboard in hand. Expression professionally neutral but eyes sharp. Murmurs erupted into open whispers. Some guests glanced toward the exits, suddenly uncertain. "Third," Richard said, voice dropping just enough to make everyone lean in. "Mrs. Harper has executed a full revision of her last will and testament. No assets, properties, investments, or inheritances previously designated for Daniel Harper or his lineal descendants will pass to them without documented restitution for emotional and financial harm, full accountability, and court-verified behavioral change. This amendment is irrevocable." Victoria lunged forward, gown dragging across the floor, voice rising into a near shriek. "This is insane!" "Completely insane. She's broke. She shops at charity shops, drives a rust-bucket car, works part-time at some dusty bookshop." "You're lying!" I stepped forward then, into the pool of light from the chandelier above. My voice came out calm, almost gentle, but every word landed like stone. "I choose simplicity, Victoria. I wear what's comfortable because I value memories over trends. I drive what's reliable because I don't need to prove anything to anyone. Robert and I kept our wealth hidden for one reason. We watched what visible money did to families, turned love into leverage, gratitude into greed. We were right." I turned to Daniel. He hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, just stood there with his shoulders hunched, as if the weight of the room were pressing him down. "For 5 years I covered your startup, loans, $220,000. When the banks came calling, I paid Victoria's endless business expenses, $140,000, in designer clothes, spa retreats, networking dinners she called investments. I quietly guaranteed most of this wedding, $68,000, so you could have the day you dreamed of. I did it because I loved you, Daniel, because I thought protecting you would keep you safe. But love isn't a blank check for cruelty. It isn't permission to stand silent while your wife slaps your mother in front of everyone you know." Daniel finally looked up. His eyes were glassy, red-rimmed. "Mom, I didn't realize. I didn't know it was you." "You chose not to look," I said quietly. "You chose her version of events over mine. That hurts more than any slap ever could." The venue manager cleared his throat. "Mrs. Langford Harper, Mr. Harper, if alternative payment cannot be arranged immediately, I will have no choice but to begin clearing the room. The contract is clear." Victoria's composure shattered. She staggered back a step, clutching at Daniel's arm. Tears streaked her mascara in black rivers. "You can't do this. This is our wedding, our day. You can't ruin everything over one stupid argument." "It wasn't an argument," I replied. "It was a choice. You chose to humiliate me publicly. I choose to stop paying for the privilege." Daniel reached toward me, hand trembling. "Mom, please. There has to be a way." "There was," I said. "Years of quiet support. Years of excuses. That way is closed now." Richard closed the folder with another sharp snap. "All notices have been delivered. The legal effects are immediate." I met Victoria's eyes one last time, wild, desperate, disbelieving. Then I looked at Daniel, searching for the boy I once knew. He was there, somewhere, buried under shame and regret, but too late to matter tonight. Without another word, I turned. Richard fell into step beside me. The crowd parted again, this time with something closer to awe than pity. Whispers followed us like smoke, but I didn't look back. The doors closed behind us. The reckoning was complete. The ballroom that had celebrated their beginning now witnessed their unraveling. And for the first time in decades, I walked away not as the invisible widow, but as the woman who had finally chosen herself. 2 years have passed since that night at the Crystal Palace, and the woman who walked out of those doors is no longer the same. Evelyn Harper, who entered them. I sit now on the wide terrace of the penthouse apartment that Victoria once dismissed as wasted on an old woman. The river glints below in the late afternoon sun. The same view. Robert and I used to watch every evening with cups of tea and quiet conversation. A small flag flutters beside the railing. Harper Senior Dignity Initiative. The organization I founded 6 months after the wedding fallout has become my life's new purpose. We have supported over 480 elders so far, men and women who, like me, had been slowly eroded by family members who saw their homes, savings, and dignity as resources to be claimed. Our helpline answers calls every day from frightened voices describing the same patterns I lived through, subtle suggestions to downsize, guilt trips disguised as concern, threats veiled as love. We provide free legal consultations, financial audits, emotional support groups, even emergency safe housing when coercion turns dangerous. I lecture at law schools and community centers, appear on BBC Breakfast and Woman's Hour, and co-authored a bestseller, Silent Wealth, Loud Betrayal, that has sold over 150,000 copies with all royalties, directed straight back to the foundation. The book isn't revenge porn. It's a practical guide. How to spot early manipulation, how to document it, how to protect yourself without losing your soul in the process. Daniel tried to reach out 5 times in these 2 years. The first call came 6 months after the television interview I gave, when the viral clips from the ballroom had reached his workplace and colleagues began treating him differently. His voice was tight, almost accusatory. "Mom, people are asking questions. Can we talk?" No apology, just damage control. I listened politely, then ended the call. The second came when his son, my grandson Theo, was born 14 months ago. "He's beautiful, Mom. You should see him." Again, no remorse, only an implicit request to re-enter my life on his terms. I sent a small, anonymous gift through Richard, a silver rattle engraved with Theo's name and a trust fund document that will mature when the boy turns 18. The fund is irrevocable, protected from his parents' reach. Theo doesn't know my name yet. One day he may search for answers about the grandmother he never met. If he does, I will be here, open but not naive. The third and fourth attempts were pleas for money after Victoria left him. She packed her things and took Theo when the last of their credit dried up. Daniel's voice cracked on the phone. "She's gone. Mom, we're losing the flat. Please." I reminded him gently that consequences are teachers. When protection becomes enabling, the 5th call, 3 months ago, was the shortest. "Your pride is going to keep you from knowing your grandson." I answered calmly, "My dignity is as important as my grandson, Daniel. I hope one day he learns that lesson better than you did." Then I hung up. For the first time, it didn't hurt. It felt like closing a book I had reread too many times. Victoria sent messages for a while, angry at first, then desperate. "We're family, Evelyn. Theo needs his grandmother." I never replied. Family is not a free pass for abuse. The silence that followed was the loudest lesson of all. My health returned like a gift I hadn't known I'd lost. The chronic tightness in my chest vanished within months. Insomnia faded. Headaches disappeared. My doctor ran tests last week and shook his head in quiet amazement. "Your blood pressure is textbook perfect. Your stress markers are those of a woman a decade younger. Whatever you did, keep doing it." What I did was simple. I stopped carrying the weight of people who refused to carry their own. I started a rooftop herb garden on the terrace, rosemary, thyme, lavender, and now teach weekly classes to other seniors in the building. They come for the plants and stay for the stories. We laugh about the ridiculous things we once tolerated in the name of love. Joseph, my neighbor from the old days, is now vice chair of the foundation. At 73, he gives lectures on spotting, financial grooming with the enthusiasm of a man half his age. Lucy, Daniel's cousin who stood by me that night, moved into the guest suite. Last year, after her own short, toxic marriage ended. She runs our education programs, turning pain into prevention. Richard still handles the legal side, but now he smiles more often. You turned a courtroom into a classroom, Evelyn, he told me last month. That's rare. The hardest truth I've accepted is that some relationships don't heal. Daniel may never offer the apology I deserve. Theo may grow up hearing only one side of the story. But I no longer wait for their redemption to feel whole. I reclaimed mine the night I walked away from that ballroom. Sometimes the kindest thing a mother can do is stop protecting someone from the consequences of hurting her. It hurts like fire at first. But on the other side is freedom, quiet, steady, hard-won. I don't regret that slap anymore. I don't regret the tears or the silence that followed. I only regret how long I let love blind me to disrespect. Today I am 73. My life is smaller in some ways. No more excuses to make. No more invisible checks to write, but infinitely larger in others. I wake up without dread. I speak without apology. I help without sacrificing myself. The woman who once shrank to fit into other people's expectations now stands tall in her own story. And every evening, as the river turns gold below the terrace, I raise a quiet toast to Robert, to the life we built in secret, and to the woman I finally allowed myself to become. The reckoning didn't end that night in the ballroom. It began there, and it led me here to peace. This is a completely fictional dramatic story written purely for entertainment. It uses popular online storytelling themes: family betrayal, hidden wealth, public consequences, empowerment after abuse, but has no connection to real people, events, or situations. Elder financial abuse and emotional manipulation are serious, real-world issues. If you or someone you know is facing them, contact local authorities, elder protection services, or trusted helplines in your country right away. Real safety, legal advice, and support always come first.